Hey, welcome back to Rocking with Nostalgia. Today we're going to be talking about WWF VHS tapes, and yes, I said WWF because the Federation will always sound better. So grab a rocking chair and let's dive in. Thanks again for joining me. If this is your first time, please subscribe. And as you just saw, that video was actually from a WWF VHS tape that I just tried out again recently. You can see the quality is not very good. For some reason, my TV screen also forced it into widescreen, but it still brought back a lot of memories, especially if you saw the tracking issue and the tape having, the screen was messing up and so on. So it just reminds me of being a kid. So with that today, I want to talk about my WWF VHS collection that I have. I primarily got my collection through mom and pop video store where I grew up. Now, most memes I see about millennials, they're always referencing back to Blockbuster. Well, some of us, we didn't have Blockbuster, especially if you grew up in a village like I did. And I say village because legit, 600 people was the population of where I lived. So we had an amazing mom and pop store called Berman's Video, and they had a great selection. Now, when Berman's went out of business and sold their tape library to the laundromat, which was called Village Coin, they ended up selling a lot of the WWF VHS tapes, and that's where I bought most of mine. And then Village Coin also would sell some of theirs over time, too. And Village Coin was my high school job that I worked at. I worked there. I started my junior year and worked until my sophomore year of college. So anytime I knew the tapes were going to be on sale, I would buy them immediately. So with that said, let's take a dive into the videos that I have still collected and still keep. Here's some one-off tapes that I have. So first we have Undertaker, his gravest matches. Next, we have Wham Bam Body Slam. I think this was probably just a house show that they recorded and threw it out on VHS so they could get some sales that way. Next, we have the famous Slammy Awards. This was from 1996. We have Bash in the USA. Again, pretty sure this was just a house show that they taped. WrestleFest 94, same idea. Monday Night Raw, what's it called? Uncut, uncensored, outrageous Monday Night Raw. So it just must have been some matches from Raw. We have WWF In Your House. I know these were specifically house shows. If you're not familiar with what house shows are, basically they're just shows that would come to your town but were not on TV. So it was not a pay-per-view or a Monday Night Raw or whatever. So they would record matches at those house shows and then they would put them out in your house. That's referencing the house shows. We have WWF Rampage from 1997. King of the Ring from 1995. Slamathon from 1996. And from these single videos, I saved the best for last, which is Hulkamania 3. This might be my oldest VHS, I'm not sure, but it was 2 hours of Hulkamania. I mean, as a kid, this was about as best as it got. Alright, next we have some SummerSlams, and the first of a few of the big box VHS tapes I have. The big box, we know these were awesome. Seeing those on the shelf at the video store, they stuck out. I know WWF had quite a few of the big box ones, but then at some point they transitioned to just normal size. These are the best. I mean, I love these still. These look great on my shelf that you can see right now. They look great, yep. Next we have SummerSlam 91. This is also one of the most memorable pay-per-views from the time. If you remember, this had the wedding of Macho Man and Miss Elizabeth. However, The Undertaker and Jake the Snake Roberts showed up, and they opened some of their presents at their reception, and there was snakes in it, and just madness afterwards. It was great. One of the better storylines. Here is SummerSlam 93. This was when Lex Luger was supposed to be the next Hulk Hogan. He never really got to those heights, but this was him versus Yokozuna for the title. And then SummerSlam 94, which had The Undertaker versus Undertaker, which was one of the greatest storylines as a kid. The dude that they had playing the fake Undertaker looked exactly like him, and I thought it was real. I was like, how did they do this? How did they get two Undertakers to face each other?
It's still real to me, damn it!
So they were building this storyline up for a while, and it came to a head here at SummerSlam 94. All right, have some Survivor Series in here. We have 1994. And if you remember Survivor Series back in the day, they were famous for their it was either 4-on-4 or 5-on-5 matches. And at the time, when you didn't see all the main superstars on TV, seeing them all on a pay-per-view like that where they could squeeze them all in was really something special. Then we have Survivor Series 95, which was headlined by Bret Hart taking on Diesel for the WWF Championship. All right, and then my favorite pay-per-view still to this day, and another one of the big boxes, is Royal Rumble 91. Hands down, the coolest covers that WWF has ever done. They did 1991 like this, and then also 1992. These, still to this day, I look at these, and it's just an amazing art style, looking at all the wrestlers who took part in the match. They did do another one, I think it was in 2001, they brought it back, but besides that, yeah, none of the covers ever lived up to this again. Then I have a few more Royal Rumbles, so you can see 1993, they then went to this boring, just traditional standard cover, nothing special, Razor Ramon versus Bret Hart. 94, this is a good cover. It's not as cool as the other ones, but going back to the animation style was definitely positive. And then Royal Rumble 95, so again, Bret Hart and Diesel. This tape was really beat up. Lots of tape on the tape to keep it together. All right, next up now I have some Attitude Era VHS. So I stopped watching wrestling from like 96 and 97. And, missing 2 years of something when you're that age seems like an eternity. But then I got back into wrestling, and I was into wrestling about as hardcore as you could be. I still watch it to this day, not as much as I did back in the Attitude Era. But, so yeah, I have a decent amount of Attitude pay-per-views, but these I did not get at the video store that was in my town. I just got these at like FYEs and other movie stores. So first is St. Valentine's Day Massacre. This was one of the best pay-per-views, I thought. Austin versus Vince McMahon in the main event, and this is where Big Show Paul White first showed up in WWF. Next, we have Fully Loaded. I don't remember what this was. Oh, it's okay. It says Fully Loaded in Your House. So this is probably just, again, one of those house shows that they recorded, and they put it out on tape to make some money. WWF Armageddon. This was just a standard pay-per-view. I don't remember much about this one, but must have been good if I bought it. We have Insurrection. This was from, I think, where was it from? Yep, this was from England. So this was never seen in the U.S. at the time, and once it was put out on tape, I wanted to see it. I was so hardcore at the time that I had to have basically everything. Then we have Unforgiven in Your House. So this might have been, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe at this time they just labeled everything in your house. It doesn't necessarily mean it was a house show. I can't remember. And then we have Austin versus McMahon. So this just chronicled the, one of the most famous, maybe the most famous rivalry ever in WWF. And then my first of two videos about the greatest of all time, The Rock. Him or Hogan are my favorite. The Rock is, I think I picked the right one. Him being the biggest movie star in the world, too, proved he was better than Austin. But that's another conversation and argument. So I have this one, which is Know Your Role. And then next was the People's Champ. So if I remember, the first one was more when he was heel Rock, corporate Rock. And the second one, being called the People's Champ, would have been more when he was a fan favorite, a babyface. And then I have WWF WrestleMania 15, which that leads into my last set of videos that I want to talk about. All right, so last up here is the WWF WrestleMania Legacy box set. A little history on this. So again, I had not watched wrestling for a couple years, and I was actually flipping through the channels, and I saw Mike Tyson was on. And this was right before WrestleMania 14. And then I saw Shawn Michaels. I was like, oh my gosh, he's still around again. It was only 2 years, but it seemed like an eternity. So I started getting into it at that point, and within a couple months, I was watching it nonstop. Well, that summer I was at, I think it was FYE, might have been called something different at the time. I saw this box set. I didn't have enough money, but my friend Kevin lent me the remaining amount that I needed to buy this, and I went home and pretty much watched this nonstop. So this was WrestleMania 1 through 14. So let's take a look at these. So first one, WrestleMania, the original, iconic for many, many reasons. The cover, also Mr. T and Hulk Hogan, just truly set the stage for what WrestleMania was and what would come from it. Next, we have WrestleMania 2. Not one of the best, but still cool to have it. 3, maybe the most monumental and iconic of all time as far as WrestleManias. Hogan versus Andre the Giant. Maybe the most iconic match of all time. And it also really kicked WrestleMania into the next level. It took place in my home state of Michigan at the Pontiac Silverdome. 93,000 fans is what they claim, though it might have not actually been that many, but still, it went from normal like basketball size arenas to now football stadiums, and the spectacle of WrestleMania just shot through the roof with WrestleMania 3. So next we have WrestleMania 4, which they had a tournament for the WWF title, and they also had, I can't remember, Andre and Hogan. They must have been one of the matches in the tournament. I can't quite remember. This also took place at Trump Plaza, so you see Trump in the crowd. It's kind of funny, and they interview him quite a few times. Next, we have WrestleMania 5. This was, again, at Trump Plaza, and one of the greatest long-term storyline telling that WWF has ever done. Hogan versus Macho Man. It was about a year-long build, and they finally collided, and just epic match. As a kid, this was one of those ones that it was fantastic seeing Hogan win. I didn't cry, but I was very close to crying how excited I was. Just amazing memories with that. Okay, now maybe the most controversial, Hogan versus Ultimate Warrior. This is also one of the most iconic matches of all time. This, to me, is the greatest cover of all time. I mean, look at those guys. They look like superheroes. But it's controversial because, damn it, Hulk Hogan won.
He hasn't moved yet. Hulkster pulls him over. 1, 2, 3. There's nobody there to count.
And I will still say that to this day. I still argue with my friend. 30 plus years later, we still argue. He was an Ultimate Warrior guy. I loved Ultimate Warrior too. Obviously, I have the shirt, but Hogan was my number one guy. And so the first babyface versus babyface match that I really remember, fantastic. Still one of the best. But again, Hogan won. Next, we have WrestleMania 7. This was one of the craziest storylines of all time. It had Sergeant Slaughter, who was this American hero who used to be on G.I. Joe, the cartoon show. Proud American, became an Iraqi sympathizer. And, so wild storytelling. They would not be doing this today. legit. I hear Slaughter interviews with him like he was nervous for his life sometimes because of how crazy the storyline was. WrestleMania 8, this was from Indianapolis, another big stadium show. This one it was okay. It wasn't great. It's really remembered for, one, they screwed up the main event. The timing was off. Papa Shango was supposed to come in at a certain time. I can't remember all the details exactly. But the other thing with the main event was the Ultimate Warrior returned, and this was around the time of the steroid trial and the issues that WWF was having with steroids, and Ultimate Warrior was off the juice for the most part. I mean, he was still ripped compared to a normal guy, but compared to what he was, he looked different. His hair was a lighter shade, so the rumors started that the real Ultimate Warrior died, and there was a new Ultimate Warrior. And the most prominent rumor was it was Kerry Von Erich, the Texas Tornado, that he was playing the new Ultimate Warrior. Obviously, that turned out not to be true, but that rumor spread on playgrounds like crazy as a kid. And just think about that. Not having the internet at that time, or if they did have it, it was very, very limited. Not many people I knew had it. But that rumor still spread amongst playgrounds across the U.S. Just fascinating how that works. All right, next up we have WrestleMania 9. This was from Las Vegas. This was the Caesar's Palace, so it had that theme to it. People aren't really fans of this one, but it was still interesting. It has definitely a cool visual look to it. WrestleMania 10 from Madison Square Garden, and it's funny, this has 10 years in the making, and now we just hit WrestleMania 40. It's crazy where time goes. WrestleMania 11, this was headlined by Lawrence Taylor and Bam Bam Bigelow, which just seems so random, but I've heard it did pretty good numbers at the time because of Lawrence Taylor and his celebrity primarily in the New York area. WrestleMania 12, this would have been when I wasn't really watching that much, but this was during the Shawn Michaels era, and Bret Hart was still one of the top guys. 13, I didn't watch during this era, but this is kind of what kicked off the Attitude Era. This has one of the most famous WrestleMania matches of all time, the Hogan versus Bret Hart match, where, spoiler, not Hogan, Austin versus Bret Hart match. And spoiler, Austin passed out, blood dripping down his face from the sharpshooter, but he did not give up, and that's really what kicked Stone Cold off into the stratosphere. The last one I have, again, this is when I started watching again, was WrestleMania 14, headlined by Austin and Shawn Michaels, and with Mike Tyson as special guest referee. This was full Attitude Era was going, and wrestling would be crazy hot for the next few years. Well, that's my WWF VHS collection. Luckily, I decided to save all of those tapes. Probably like most of you, I got rid of almost all of the VHS tapes that I had as a kid. I really regret selling all the horror movies I had. Once I got DVD, I was like, why do I want the VHS? And now those VHS go for a lot of money. But again, I kept my WWF ones, and I'm very happy for that. So let me know what WWF VHS tapes you have, or if you don't have any, which ones do you remember the most? And again, if you're new to the channel, please subscribe, and I will see you next time.